Chosen one, before anything else, you need to pause and truly arrive here. What I'm about to share with you is not background noise, not something meant to be half heard while your mind drifts elsewhere. This message demands your full attention, your full presence, because it touches something deep, ancient, and profoundly real about you. While preparing this revelation, I discovered something about your path, your energy, your choices that left me completely silent for several minutes. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because what emerged was so rare, so precise, that it demanded respect before words. You did something. And no, this isn't about a grand ritual, a public declaration, or some dramatic moment you staged to impress heaven or challenge hell. This was far more subtle and far more powerful. What you did emerged naturally from your essence, automatically, instinctively, as if it were woven into who you are at the deepest level. You didn't even realize it was happening, but the impact of that moment sent shockwaves through dimensions your human eyes cannot see. A spiritual earthquake, a rupture in the expected order of things. You made the devil protect you. I already know what your mind is doing right now. You're questioning this, doubting it, thinking this is exaggeration symbolism or another attempt to make you feel special without substance. You've heard messages before that promised elevation but delivered nothing real. That's why I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm not asking for blind faith, emotional agreement, or spiritual fantasy. What I'm about to do is show you the evidence. I'm going to describe exactly what you did when you did it and why it forced a decision that had never been made about a living human being in recorded spiritual history. A declaration was issued, a declaration of status. You were marked as untouchable. And once you understand how and why this happened, everything changes. Every battle you fought, every moment you wondered why things were so hard, every time you felt targeted, pressured, or isolated, it will all rearrange itself into a single undeniable pattern. Stay with me until the end because I'm going to reveal the exact moment that made all of hell stop and observe you what it truly means to be declared untouchable by dark forces and why those who tried to harm you are about to face consequences they never anticipated. If you felt recently that something inside you shifted, that you crossed an invisible line and can never go back to who you used to be, write 777 in the comments. This message is not finding you by accident. Let me tell you something that may sound strange at first, but that you need to understand for everything else to make sense. Dark forces do not operate randomly. They are not chaotic in the way most people imagine. They operate with systems, with protocols, with surveillance mechanisms designed to monitor human behavior on a massive scale. It is not that the devil personally watches every human being. Such a thing would be inefficient even for him. Instead, there are automatic alerts, thresholds embedded into the architecture of darkness itself. When a human soul does something that should not be possible according to their predictive models, those alarms activate instantly. And whether you realize it or not, you triggered one of those alarms. This did not happen years ago. It wasn't some distant event buried in childhood memory. It happened recently within the last few weeks during a period of your life that felt especially heavy, especially relentless. You were facing a situation that seemed almost perfectly designed to break you, not just inconvenience you, not just slow you down, break you. The kind of situation where the pressure feels personal, targeted, as if every variable has been aligned to push you toward collapse. You were carrying a weight that would have crushed most people without ceremony, a weight that made even breathing feel like effort. And all logical indicators, every rational calculation pointed toward the same conclusion: give up, walk away, stop fighting, protect what little energy you have left. But you didn't. And this is where it's important to understand something subtle but critical. I'm not saying you simply endured. Endurance alone does not activate anything in the unseen realms. Many people survive by inertia, by numbness, by refusing to look at reality too closely. Many people keep going simply because they don't know how to stop. That does not register. That does not disrupt anything. What you did was fundamentally different. You stopped running internally. You looked directly at the worst possible outcome of your life. You didn't sugarcoat it. You didn't minimize it. You didn't distract yourself from it. You allowed yourself to fully feel the fear, raw, consuming total. You felt the sensation of the ground disappearing beneath your feet. You understood in your bones that you could lose everything that mattered to you: your stability, your reputation, your relationships, your sense of identity. You knew it was a real possibility, not an abstract one. And you didn't look away. That alone is rare. But what happened next is what changed everything. Despite the fear, despite the trembling, despite the nights where your stomach was tight and your thoughts spiraled through every possible disaster, you chose to move forward anyway. Not because you felt brave, not because you were confident, not because you believed everything would work out. You moved forward while afraid. You moved forward knowing it could hurt, knowing it could fail, knowing it could cost you. Somewhere deep inside you, beyond logic, beyond survival instinct, a sentence formed not out loud, not dramatically, but with absolute clarity. I do this even though I'm afraid. That sentence is not supposed to exist in the human psyche under those conditions. According to the models darkness has relied on for thousands of years, fear is the stopping point. Fear is the lever. Fear is the control mechanism. When fear reaches a certain intensity, humans are expected to retreat to compromise, to choose safety over truth, comfort over integrity. The entire infrastructure of darkness is built on this assumption. It is their most reliable weapon. So when you acted without removing fear, when you didn't numb it, deny it, or escape it, but carried it with you and still functioned, the system registered a contradiction. And contradictions trigger alarms. At that exact moment, while that quiet decision solidified inside you, something extraordinary happened in dimensions you cannot perceive. Not heaven's alarms, those are triggered by many things, but hell's alarms went off because you demonstrated something that violates their core operating logic. Fear did not stop you. Fear did not weaken you. Fear did not control you. Understand why this is so destabilizing. If fear loses its power over a single soul, that soul becomes unpredictable. And unpredictability is dangerous to any system that depends on control. You didn't just resist fear, you rendered it ineffective. You became a variable they could not solve, a mathematical problem with no solution. And when that happens, the response is immediate and serious. An emergency analysis was initiated, not because of a global crisis, not because of a large-scale disruption, specifically because of you. Your spiritual profile was flagged, isolated, examined. Infernal hierarchies were summoned to understand how an ordinary human being, without special training, without preparation, without external reinforcement, could demonstrate a level of courage that rivals entities designed for war. They expected recklessness. They expected ignorance. They expected blind defiance. What they found unsettled them far more. They observed that you calculate risk clearly. You understand consequences. You do not act because you don't see danger. You act while seeing it completely. You do not dissociate from fear. You don't suppress it. You don't pretend it isn't there. You feel it, fully process it, and continue to function at full capacity. This is what terrifies darkness. Not the absence of fear, but mastery in its presence. They tested you, not symbolically through life, through scenarios engineered to push specific buttons, worst-case projections, situations designed to tempt you into shortcuts, opportunities that would have solved your problems quickly if you were willing to bend your principles just a little. You were offered relief at the cost of integrity, power at the cost of conscience, ease at the cost of alignment, and every time you chose the harder but correct path, the specialist took note. One observed that you processed despair more efficiently than their own entities. Another noted that greed-based manipulation consistently failed with you. Offers were rejected without drama, without negotiation, without internal bargaining. You preferred to suffer doing what was right than prosper doing what was wrong. That pattern repeated over and over across different areas of your life, often when no one was watching and no recognition was possible. Then the complete file of your life was reviewed. Not just recent events, but everything. Every quiet act of courage. Every moment you got back up when staying down would have been understandable. Every decision you made when no one would have known if you chose the easy way out. Every time you protected your integrity at personal cost. And when the analysis was complete, something unprecedented happened. The Prince of Darkness said nothing for a long moment. Silence in that realm is not common. It signals recognition. And then he spoke words he had never spoken about a living human being. This soul has fiber that I respect. Respect is not admiration. It is not kindness. It is acknowledgement of an equal in a specific domain. Darkness does not respect easily. It does not recognize strength without overwhelming evidence. But your consistency forced a recalculation. Continuing to attack you would not break you. Corrupting you would not work. Intimidating you would only expose weakness on their side. And that realization marked the beginning of a strategic shift that would change your status permanently. What you need to understand deeply is that none of this happened because you tried to be special. None of it happened because you sought recognition or power. It happened because in the most private moments of your life when fear was real and the cost was high, you chose to act with courage anyway. You didn't know you were being observed. You didn't know you were being evaluated. You simply stayed true to yourself. And that is what made all the difference. And once that shift occurred, once darkness accepted that fear no longer worked on you, the strategy changed not toward greater force, but towards something far more subtle and revealing. Because when intimidation fails, when pressure no longer bends a soul, the next move is always the same temptation. Darkness does not immediately withdraw from a worthy adversary. It tests one final hypothesis. It asks a single decisive question: can this soul be bought? This is where many people misunderstand how corruption actually works. Darkness does not appear with grotesque imagery or dramatic ultimatums. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand your soul outright. That would be crude, inefficient, and easily rejected. Instead, it approaches through realism, through life, through moments that look ordinary on the surface but carry enormous spiritual weight beneath them. It offers not evil, but convenience, not destruction, but relief, not betrayal, but just this once. And because you were already exhausted, already carrying the scars of battles, no one saw the timing was precise. An opportunity appeared. Maybe it came through a person, someone persuasive, someone who seemed helpful, supportive, even generous. Maybe it came as a professional, opening a financial shortcut, a chance to finally breathe after so much pressure. On paper, it solved several problems at once. It reduced stress. It promised stability. It made the future look manageable again. And it came with urgency, as these things often do, now or never take it before it's gone. You deserve this after everything you've been through. There was only one small detail, a minor concession, something that could be rationalized easily, a bending of values, not a breaking, a quiet compromise no one would ever need to know about. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would technically hurt anyone, just enough to see if you would choose effectiveness over integrity. And here's the part that matters most: you didn't reject it with anger. You didn't make a speech. You didn't feel morally superior. You simply felt something tighten inside you, a subtle resistance, a discomfort that didn't come from fear of consequences, but from misalignment. That quiet internal signal that said this isn't right, even though it looked good, even though it would have helped, even though you were tired of struggling. So you said no. Maybe externally nothing happened. Maybe you just didn't follow up. Maybe you delayed until the window closed. Maybe you politely declined. Or maybe you simply didn't act, allowing the opportunity to dissolve on its own. But spiritually, that moment echoed loudly, because that was not just a choice, it was a refusal of alliance. There may have been another test as well, a different flavor but the same intention: revenge, a chance to balance the scales. Someone who had hurt you, wronged you, underestimated you, or taken advantage of your goodwill suddenly became vulnerable. You had leverage, you had justification, and no one would have blamed you. In fact, many would have applauded you for it. They deserved it, logic whispered. This is fairness, not cruelty. But again, something deeper intervened. Not weakness, not fear, not morality imposed from outside, but an internal law you cannot violate without fragmenting yourself. You knew that acting from revenge would cost you something far more valuable than the satisfaction it promised. You understood instinctively that you cannot build your future using the same energy that wounded you in the past, so you let it go. That was not mercy for them. That was loyalty to yourself. These moments, quiet, almost invisible, were the final tests. Darkness was not offering you destruction. It was offering you partnership. It was saying you have strength, courage, resilience. We could use that. It was proposing a trade. Stop caring so much about doing what's right, and we'll make sure you never have to struggle like this again. Power without loneliness, protection without sacrifice, progress without pain. This is the most dangerous offer there is, not because it's evil, but because it's efficient. And it comes precisely when a person is most tired of being strong alone. But you refused. And that refusal changed everything. When you turned away, not dramatically, not consciously even, but decisively, darkness learned something it could not ignore. This wasn't stubbornness. This wasn't temporary resistance. This wasn't moral rigidity that could be softened over time. This was incorruptibility, a structural quality of your being, something woven so deeply into you that no incentive, no pressure, no reward could extract it. That is when the calculation ended. You need to understand how rare this is. Most souls, even good ones, eventually compromise under the right conditions. Not because they are weak, but because they are human. Fatigue erodes principles. Loneliness lowers standards. Fear narrows perspective. Darkness relies on this. It doesn't need to corrupt everyone just enough, just once, just when it matters. But you didn't bend. And when darkness confirms that corruption is impossible, continuing engagement becomes counterproductive. Attacking you would only sharpen you further. Tempting you would only reinforce your integrity. Every interaction strengthened the very qualities they needed neutralized. At that point, there are only two options left: annihilation or withdrawal. Annihilation was not possible. You had already proven that pressure refines you rather than breaks you. So the only remaining move, the one preserved by an ancient distorted code of honor, was recognition. This is where the declaration occurred. Not protection born of kindness, not mercy, not fear, respect. There exists an old rule within darkness older than humanity itself. When an adversary demonstrates absolute incorruptibility, when all strategies fail and continued engagement threatens credibility, that adversary is removed from active operations, not elevated, not celebrated, but marked, cataloged, declared off limits, untouchable. The order concerning you was precise. No entity under the command of darkness is to interfere with you directly. No more targeted manipulation. No more engineered temptations. No more coordinated attacks designed to destabilize your path. You were placed into a category so small, it's almost theoretical souls whose integrity is so consistent that opposition only exposes weakness in those who attempt it. This is not surrender, it is strategic retreat. Darkness understands something most humans don't. Attacking someone who has already proven unbreakable diminishes the attacker. It signals impotence. And in systems built on dominance, appearing weak is worse than losing. So instead of continuing to fail against you, darkness preserved its image by declaring you forbidden territory. This is why certain things have already started to change around you. You may have noticed that when people attempt to undermine you, it backfires in unexpected ways. Plans fall apart, words twist against their speakers, situations reverse without you lifting a finger. This is not coincidence, and it is not simple karma. It is non-interference protocol in action. Any energy directed at you is automatically redirected back to its source, amplified by the imbalance that caused it. You may have noticed that some people who once loomed large in your life, critics, rivals, energy drainers, have simply vanished. No confrontation, no closure. They drifted away, distracted by their own chaos. That is not avoidance. That is incompatibility. Their frequency can no longer sustain proximity to yours without destabilizing them. You may have noticed doors closing that you desperately wanted open, opportunities that slipped through your fingers, relationships that never fully formed, paths that seemed right but dissolved at the last moment. At the time, it felt like rejection. Later, it revealed itself as protection. You were being blocked from alliances and environments that would have compromised your trajectory. And perhaps most striking of all, you may have noticed your intuition sharpening to an almost unsettling degree. You know things now. You read between words. You sense motives before actions. You feel alignment or danger instantly without evidence. This is not imagination. It is information flow. When you were declared untouchable, you were not isolated. You were monitored. And part of that monitoring includes ensuring you receive the signals necessary to navigate safely. Even your presence has begun to affect others. Some people relax around you, open up, feel inspired. Others grow uneasy, defensive, restless. They avoid eye contact. They cut conversations short. This is not because you are intimidating. It is because integrity is uncomfortable for those who operate without it. Your frequency exposes dissonance simply by existing. All of this is already happening because the declaration has already been issued. And here is the most important thing to understand. You did not earn this through perfection. You earned it through consistency, through choosing the right thing when it cost you, through refusing shortcuts when you were tired, through protecting your inner compass even when no one would have known if you didn't. You were not protected because you were chosen. You were chosen because you proved you could not be corrupted. And that is why the story does not end here, but turns decisively towards something even greater. And while all of this was unfolding on one side of the unseen, while darkness analyzed you, tested you, recalculated, and finally stepped back, another presence was observing everything from a completely different vantage point, because nothing you experienced went unnoticed. Not the fear, not the exhaustion, not the quiet decisions you made when no one was watching. Heaven was watching too, but not with suspicion or threat, with recognition. Where darkness saw a problem to solve, heaven saw a confirmation. You need to understand something essential about how spiritual purpose works, because without this, the rest of the story cannot fully land. Not every soul incarnates on earth for the same reason. Some come to experience comfort, creativity, learning, or love in relatively balanced environments. But there is a rare category of souls that choose a much harder assignment long before they are born. These souls do not seek ease, they seek refinement. They volunteer for pressure, complexity, emotional extremes, and morally demanding paths, not because they enjoy suffering, but because they require those conditions to forge a very specific kind of strength. You are one of those souls. Before incarnation, consciousness is not limited by fear. It sees clearly. It understands exactly what kind of experiences will be required to develop certain capacities. And some souls, fully aware of the difficulty, choose to enter environments where fear is dense, where integrity is costly, where courage is demanded repeatedly without applause. These are often the souls who grow up feeling different, out of place, or burdened from an early age without knowing why. Not because something is wrong with them, but because they are carrying a deeper mission they cannot yet remember. Heaven has always known who you are. The difficult situations you faced were not punishments. They were not accidents. They were not evidence that you were unlucky or overlooked. They were the precise conditions necessary to activate the warrior level courage embedded in you before birth. And every time you chose the difficult but correct path, even without conscious understanding of why it mattered so much, you were aligning with that original blueprint. This is why heaven observed the tests darkness brought to you with such intensity, not because they wanted you to suffer, but because they needed confirmation. Confirmation that you would remember who you are even without memory, that you would choose integrity without reward, that you would act bravely without guarantees, that you would remain yourself under pressure strong enough to fracture most identities. And you did. Every refusal to compromise, every moment you continued despite fear, every decision that cost you comfort but preserved your alignment, those were signals, proof, evidence that the warrior essence you encoded into yourself before incarnation survived the veil of forgetfulness that comes with being human. When darkness made its final offer and you instinctively rejected it, heaven took notice in a way that changed your trajectory permanently, because that was not just moral behavior. That was soul memory activating. That was you choosing in the present what you had already chosen long ago. And that is when a decision was made. There exists a celestial protocol that is not activated lightly. It is not based on belief, intention, or potential. It is based on demonstrated consistency under pressure. It is called, in essence, confirmed warrior. This classification is applied only when it becomes clear that a soul no longer needs to be tested, because nothing external can alter its internal orientation. You reached that threshold. What this means is profound. From that moment forward, heaven no longer observes you to see if you will act with courage. It operates on the assumption that you will. And because of that support, structures shift. You are no longer left to face everything alone to prove yourself. Resources begin to align. Timing begins to cooperate. Assistance appears not always dramatically, but precisely when needed. This does not mean your life suddenly becomes effortless. Warriors are not removed from the battlefield, but it does mean you are no longer sent into battles without backup. You are no longer placed in situations where survival requires self-betrayal. You are no longer forced to choose between integrity and existence. The era of constant proving is over. This is why you may already be sensing a subtle change. Problems that once felt endless are beginning to loosen. Situations that were stagnant are shifting unexpectedly. Solutions appear from angles you hadn't considered. People who drained you emotionally are exiting your life without conflict. Opportunities that align with who you are, not who you'd have to pretend to be, are emerging slowly but surely. This is not luck. This is coordination. But protection was only the first phase. Heaven does not activate warriors simply to keep them safe. It activates them to serve as stabilizing forces in environments saturated with fear. And this is where your role expands beyond your personal life. You may not see yourself as influential. You may not feel powerful. But something has already begun to happen around you that proves otherwise. Your presence changes rooms, not because you dominate them, but because you stabilize them. People feel calmer, clearer, or unexpectedly honest around you. Others feel exposed and uneasy. This is not personality. This is frequency. Courage is contagious. When you make a brave decision openly, even a small one, you give others permission to do the same. When you continue without collapsing, you demonstrate what is possible. When you maintain principles under pressure, you dismantle the illusion that fear must always win. You don't need to preach. You don't need to convince. Simply living as you do transmits information at a level deeper than words. This is why certain people suddenly find themselves making different choices after interacting with you. The friend who was about to give up and didn't. The stranger who found confidence after a brief conversation. The colleague who decided to speak truth where they would have stayed silent before. You didn't push them. You didn't instruct them. Your frequency activated something dormant in them. That is not accidental. Humanity is currently at a crossroads that most people sense but cannot articulate. Fear is being amplified everywhere. Fear of the future, fear of loss, fear of each other, fear of change. Fear is an efficient control mechanism, and dark forces know this. A fearful population is predictable, manageable, divided. Courage disrupts that entirely. This is why heaven is activating warriors now, not to fight darkness directly, not to engage in dramatic spiritual battles, but to exist bravely in public, visible ways. To demonstrate that fear can be felt without being obeyed. To show that integrity does not require perfection, only consistency. To embody a different way of being that others can resonate with when they are ready. You are part of a larger operation, whether you consciously signed up for it or not, and you are not alone in it. Soon, you will begin to recognize others like you, not through labels or declarations, but through resonance. There will be an unspoken understanding, a familiarity, a recognition that doesn't require explanation. Warriors find each other not by searching, but by alignment. As this network forms, fear loses its leverage, because fear only works when people believe they are alone in resisting it. When enough individuals demonstrate courage simultaneously, the illusion collapses. Control mechanisms fail. Panic loses momentum. Integrity becomes viable again. This is why darkness marked you as untouchable. Not because you are harmless, but because you are operational. Because your mission does not require permission. Because your courage is not reactive, but inherent. because stopping you would require resources that would only expose their limitations. And now there is one final message you need to hear clearly. Heaven wants you to know that nothing you endured was wasted. Every sacrifice was recorded. Every time you chose truth over ease, it was noted. Every tear you shed alone, every night you questioned whether it was worth it, every moment you felt unseen or delayed, none of it disappeared into nothingness. There is an accounting beyond the visible, and your account is full. The delay you experienced was not denial, it was preparation. You were not being ignored, you were being refined. And now the waiting phase is ending. You are deeply loved not for what you accomplish, not for how strong you appear, not for how much you endure, but for who you are at your core. That love does not fluctuate. It does not need to be earned. It does not expire. You do not lose it when you are tired, afraid, or imperfect. It is constant, available, and unwavering. Even darkness in its own distorted way recognizes you now. It will not pursue you. It will not attempt to bend you. It has stepped aside not out of generosity, but out of acknowledgement. The declaration it issued is permanent. You did this with your choices, with your courage, with your refusal to give up or sell yourself, even when you had every reason to. You forced heaven to promote you. You forced darkness to retreat. You forced the universe to recognize you as what you have always been, a spiritual warrior fully aligned with the mission you chose long before you ever took your first breath. And now we arrive at the point this entire revelation has been quietly guiding you toward the moment where everything you've heard stops being information and becomes confirmation. Not confirmation of a fantasy, not confirmation of an idea meant to temporarily lift your mood, but confirmation of something your soul has known for a long time and your life has been proving step by step. This is not the end of the story. It is the moment you finally understand what story you have been living all along. You were never simply struggling. You were training. You were never delayed because you were unworthy. You were being prepared because what you carry cannot be rushed. Every season of isolation, every phase where it felt like you were walking alone, while others advanced effortlessly, every time you wondered why doing the right thing seemed to cost you more than it rewarded you. All of that was shaping you into someone who could not be shaken, bought, or broken. Someone who could stand steady when fear is loud and pressure is relentless. Heaven wants you to know this clearly. Everything you sacrificed was seen, not metaphorically, not vaguely, seen, counted, remembered. Every time you told the truth, when silence would have been easier, every time you protected someone weaker, even though it put you at risk, every time you held your integrity when compromising would have made life smoother. It may have felt like no one noticed, like honesty was invisible currency in a world that rewards shortcuts. But there is an accounting that operates beyond appearances, and your account is overflowing. Even the pain had purpose. The tears you shed when no one was there to comfort you were not wasted. They were evidence of depth of sincerity, of a heart that did not harden even under strain. Those tears were collected not to immortalize suffering, but to transform it. What comes next in your life will not erase what you endured. It will redeem it. Blessings are approaching in forms you could not have predicted precisely because they are not random. They are responses. The long waiting period you endured, the feeling of being held back, of watching doors open for others while yours remained closed, was not punishment. It was containment. You are not ready to be released earlier because the impact you carry now would not have been stable then. Preparation is invisible while it's happening, but unmistakable once it's complete. And now it is complete. You are not loved. because you are strong. You became strong because you are loved. That love is not conditional on performance success or spiritual perfection. It does not diminish when you are tired or afraid. It does not disappear when you doubt. It simply exists, constant and available, waiting for you to stop questioning whether you deserve it. And yes, even darkness knows who you are now. Not in admiration, not in worship, but in acknowledgement. It will not pursue you. It will not waste resources trying to bend what cannot be bent. You were declared untouchable not as a gift, but as a consequence of courage demonstrated consistently, a consequence of integrity maintained when no one was enforcing it, a consequence of refusing to quit when quitting would have been understandable. You did not ask for this status. You did not chase it. You earned it by being who you are when no one was watching. From this point forward, what unfolds in your life will feel different, not because challenges disappear, but because you are no longer fighting unseen wars alone. The right people will recognize you. The right opportunities will align with you. The right doors will open at the right time, not to test you, but to move you forward. And when you look back, you will see that nothing was accidental. Every step was part of a sequence leading you here. So stand in this truth without shrinking. Walk forward without apology. Live bravely, not to prove anything, but because bravery is now your natural state. You are not simply protected by greater forces. You force those forces to respond to you. Heaven promoted you because you proved worthy. Darkness stepped aside because you proved unbreakable. And everything that comes next, every blessing, every opening, every moment of peace and expansion, is not a gift you didn't deserve. It is the natural result of who you chose to be when fear had every reason to win and didn't.